Let's get a view on this change in the guidance and the onus now on head teachers in schools to decide whether or not face coverings should be used. Let's talk to the Joint General Secretary of the National Education Union, who is Mary Bousted, and she joins us on the line. Mary Bousted, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Do you think it's fair to put the decision down to head teachers?
I think it's a halfway house. I think it's better that the guidance has been issued and the blanket ban has been overturned. But I do think it puts a lot of responsibility on school leaders to make decisions that they may not be the best people to make. School leaders are expert at leading learning and leading schools. But these are public health issues, and I think the government should be clear. They should say either we want face coverings in areas of high incidence of the virus where there is a local lockdown, and we don't want them in areas of low incidence, or that we want face coverings everywhere in crowded corridors and in other communal areas in schools. I think it puts an awful lot of pressure on school leaders. Say you are a school leader who doesn't implement the face coverings and there is an outbreak in your school. That puts you in a really difficult position.
Well, indeed, and they've got to manage relationships with their pupils and with their parent body as well. This would add a whole other dimension to it, that they're trying to look after the health of the whole community as well.
Yes, as if they hadn't got enough to do, and as if the preparation for school return had not been hindered by the chaos in secondary schools, because this affects secondary schools, not primary, over A-level and GCSE grades, and in sixth form colleges over BTEC as well. So the return to school, we welcome, we support the return to school. We think it is important for children and young people to be back in school, but this is a very, very complex thing that school leaders have to do, and they have not been helped by government U-turns and government incompetence. And this latest U-turn still leaves them in a very difficult position.
If it is that the government is following the science, and if you rely on the WHO as a scientific body, then their guidance is quite clear. For children in Year 7 and above, in public spaces like school corridors and canteens and reception areas, masks should be worn.
Yes, it is quite clear, and if the government is following the guidance, and if, as they say, the guidance has changed, the WHO came forward to this guidance 4 days ago, so there is a question about why it's taken 4 days for the government guidance to change, then they should follow the whole of the guidance, and I do think that would be simpler. I think it would be far simpler and far clearer if they said simply that in all secondary schools, in communal areas, young people and students will wear face coverings. You know, we know that schools in England are some of the most overcrowded in Europe. There's 97% occupancy in schools. Corridors are crowded. We don't build our schools generally. Our classrooms are small for the number of pupils. Corridors and communal spaces are really very crowded. And so it seems to me that it would have been simpler and made more sense just to implement guidance fully, and to have done so earlier, not to have done so days before schools return.
And what are you hearing, with just a few days until schools are due to get back up and running, what are you hearing from members of staff? Are there concerns about whether it's safe for their pupils, for them, and for the school as a body? Have they been eased, do you think, by these arrangements?
I think it is better that the blanket ban, which frankly was never going to pass muster. That was never going to be obeyed. We had multi-academy trust leaders yesterday, Steve Chalk from Oasis and others, saying no, we don't care what the government says. We are going to implement masks in communal areas. So once that was happening, once big academy trust leaders were making their own decisions, then the ban was going to the ban on face masks in schools was going to go. But what hasn't helped confidence of my members, teachers and support staff in a return to school and school leaders is the constant last-minute U-turns by this government. Really, they have to do much better than this. They're asking school leaders and teachers and support staff and parents and students to do a big thing, which is to go into school and to resume education in pretty unique circumstances where you're in very crowded buildings where social distancing largely isn't possible. And so what you need in that situation to give people confidence is really clear, steady, consistent guidance and consistent expectations. And I'm afraid that just has not been the case with this government. In fact, it's been the opposite.
Mary Bousted, we thank you for your time. Mary is the Joint General Secretary of the National Education Union.